What's up, everybody? Hey, JD, Diane is already here. That's great. So, today has been a shitty day. Just right off the bat, been a shitty day. Work was horrible, so I'm trying to recover and get everything going. And then I get set up tonight with a guest, and right before I'm going to hit the button that says, "Hey, we're going to start live," my internet went out. Like the router just took a shit, and I had to scramble and get things going. So hopefully we'll be okay, and we'll be able to continue for the whole night, or else I'm going to start breaking stuff, because that's what kind of day it is. Anyway, so welcome everyone. Glad to see everyone showing up. Bob's on YouTube. Bob, what the hell are you doing on YouTube? Get back on Facebook, weirdo. Anyway, all right, so let's get into it. Let me try to get into my routine here, and we'll start with the rules. Let me pop the rules up here. So, standard procedure, every episode we have, we go with the rules. Rule number 1 is that you are welcome to ask any paranormal related questions that you see fit or you're curious about, and I'll give you my skeptical opinion. Or if, like tonight, I have a guest, you're welcome to ask him questions, and he'll answer them for you, which is great because I don't have to talk all night. Number 2 is I don't know everything. And most of the time my guests don't know everything either, but they do have specialties and expertise in some subjects. So if we don't know what we're talking about, we can certainly look it up, or we can write down some notes and get back to you later. Rule number 3 is the golden rule. Listen to Patrick Swayze and be nice until it's not a time to not be nice, but be nice. Don't be a dick. This is for casual conversation. This is for casual debate and discussion. Have fun in the chat room, talk back and forth. That's great. But if there's any name calling, boom, I boot you. And you will never return ever. Banned for life. Rule number 4 is when you have a question, please do me a favor and put a Q or the word question in front of your comment. And that way, when I go through all the comments, I can pick out the questions really easy and get right to them. And then number 5, drink up, because that's what this is about. It's a Skeptical Help bar. So let me know what's going on, where you're from, what you're drinking. Let's get to the comments here. We got Bob. We got Tim. Tim Vickers is in the house. Nice. Oh, Bob is pulling double duties. Nice. So I have a guest tonight, and his name is Rob Palmer. And I'm going to read his short bio because he has a long one, which is so freaking long. Because he does too much shit. That's why. So his short bio is Rob Palmer is a retired aerospace engineer who became a skeptical activist when he joined the Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia project in 2016. He began writing for Skeptical Inquirer in 2018 as the Well-Known Skeptic. So, without further ado, I am going to bring him on, and we can get down to business. There's Rob.
Cheers, and in your honor, a rum drink.
Oh, there you go. I love that. Rum. Oh, I started to write Kenny's specialty on here and then just got distracted. my ADHD kicked in, and I was like, what?
For those who don't know you, the first time I met Kenny, I had won a bet where he was supposed to give me a drink. And after the festivities, he gave me one of those little tiny things that you find in a rented room's refrigerator. But I was so honored anyway, I kept the thing for a year without drinking it. So.
That was a contest, right? It was the first one that came up to me during
and mentioned, so I don't remember what the detail was, but you said the first part, Susan or someone interviewed you for Skeptical Inquirer, and it was about your upcoming presentation, which I was at.
I must include here, though, this was all her idea.
Oh, okay.
I actually didn't know anything about it until her piece came out.
No.
Yeah, yes, I read it. I was like, what? I'm doing what?
So it was the first person who comes up to you and mentions, maybe it was the interview itself or something, and I had to do that.
Yep, and that was the first time we met, and I gave you a mini bottle of rum, which,
like I said, I kept it in an honored place on my bar forever before I cracked it open. There was some special occasion, which I actually can't remember now what it was, but I didn't want to drink it any old day.
Right. I think Was it when you started writing for Skeptical
Oh,
Inquirer?
yes, I think that's right. When I got my first article published, you're correct.
Yeah, which is a great movement, ain't it?
That was amazing.
It's so nice.
Especially because it came out of the blue.
Right. So let's get into it. Let's. Who are you? Who is Rob Palmer? Like I put your long bio in the advertisement, the promo for the show, and then I just read off your. I
don't know if anybody read that. It was like a wall of words. When I gave it to you, it had spaces and paragraphs, and for some reason the format just took all that out, and it's like, oh my god.
Oh, wait a minute. See, we're already going to get into an argument because Susan's here saying, I think Kenny has been drinking. It was totally your idea, Susan. Because I remember talking to you and you said, well, I thought it'd be something fun to put in there.
We'll have to get Professor Elizabeth Loftus on here who understands human memories and the frailty thereof to see who's right.
Oh, there's the article. She posted the article too.
Okay.
I'm going to have to read that again. Riddle me biddle. Oh, that was so much fun. All right. So you began your skeptical activism when you joined Guerrilla Skepticism. And Susan was on a while back and she talked about it a little bit, but what's your involvement? Oh, nice. I need one of those shirts. I do. Can you buy them?
Yeah, it's the same way that I bought the one from your store. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Right. There's a logo out there. What did Susan say? She doesn't think so. Well, basically,
Susan. She
posted the logo, and you send it to one of those stores, and they they'll print anything pretty much, I guess. So yeah.
So all right. So Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. You are an editor, correct?
It's a weird term. I think most people don't think of editor in a normal terminology. An editor is not the person who writes something. It's someone who maybe polishes what was written and makes it, fit the format of the magazine or periodical or book. But in Wikipedia, for some reason, they call the people who do the writing the editors. So yes, I'm a Wikipedia writer, but they call them editors.
How did you get involved with that?
So I was I don't know how far back we want to go here, but I used to believe in all sorts of paranormal things. And I did. I was into biorhythms and aliens on the moon and alien abductions. And I played with Ouija boards and thought there was something real to them. It was a long time ago. But so I found the Skeptical Inquirer magazine, the one that we both write for now. So that's very ironic. And that's what turned me around. I said, what? These things aren't real? Oh, how is that possible? But, it made me think more rationally about the things I just was accepting as fact because they were on television. But anyway, so that turned me into, I would say, a more rationalist or skeptic. And I just stayed that way for, it had to be 30 years and didn't do anything about it. I had a career that had nothing to do with science directly or skepticism. I was an aerospace engineer. And then podcasting came about. And I was a little slow to pick that up, I think. But I, got it on my iPod. I started listening. I think I found the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe first because I was into astronomy and I put universe. And I said, wait, this isn't about space, but this was like even a more interesting topic. And then they mentioned other podcasts, or I decided, let me Google Skeptic podcasts, and I found other ones. And one of them, Susan was on, which was the Skeptic Zone and Skepticality. And she had a segment and she was discussing this crazy idea of editing Wikipedia in order to improve the science, remove, unproven claims and that sort of thing. And just at that time, I had a friend who had descended into the most awful to me woo there was, to the point where she cried because she thought science had the cure for cancer and her father died needlessly from cancer because they wouldn't give it to him. She believes in every single thing out there, maybe except flat earth. And I was at my wit's end. Like, I can't convince her. She shuts me down. Her friends think I'm crazy. What can I do to make a difference? And I said, let me see about this Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia thing. So I contacted Susan, took the training, which I went through pretty quickly. And there you go. So now I'm able to make modifications to something people actually read when they're looking for information, so they don't go down the wrong path. That's the point.
So was it your friend or coworker? You said
a friend.
So what was it that they were? Did they just believe everything, or was there something specific?
I believe it's everything. It's chemtrails. It's that you can't wear underarm deodorant because it's going to poison you, and rubbing crystals on you is better. I'm not making this up. There was something where NASA put a set of balloons into the atmosphere during the last full eclipse in order to take measurements, and she had posted all over, oh no, they're releasing biochemicals to poison us. I mean, it's like everything. Yeah. And except she got insulted when I said, this is one of them. I said, this is like the flat earth belief. How dare you say I believe in that? But like everything, her best friend is a psychic, so there's no way to argue her out of that. And I know we're going to talk about that subject, but yeah, so it was everything. And I actually got very distressed when she would make these slams against the medical establishment for, hiding the cure for cancer. And I finally had to, I didn't unfriend her, but I blocked her so I didn't see her daily posts about this nonsense, because it was literally driving me up the wall.
I find that a lot too, because I interact with a lot of different people, and I'm sure you do, but especially on social media, I interact with a lot of people that are against vaccines, or they. Oh,
she's that too. She's anti. Oh yeah, they're trying to chip us. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I'm not going to stop being friends with somebody, but I'm going to stop paying attention to you. Because I don't want to see it all the time, because it's, even if you try to engage into an argument or a debate, I don't know about you, but I find it's just running around in circles.
Yeah, it's distressing. It's like, banging your head against the wall, and it doesn't help anything.
Yeah. So again, Susan, that was your idea. That was so your idea.
Well, I don't know. Kenny, the Skeptical Inquirer is an official, reliable source in Wikipedia.
Here we go.
and it says that, so that must be the fact.
Oh my goodness, we're gonna fight until both of us are in our graves. All right, so you edit the pages. Is there specific things that you look for? Like, what kind of subjects are you editing? Because I saw that you did like hundreds or thousands of pages that you've edited.
Oh God! Well, I have. I just looked up the numbers because I knew you would ask. 11.7 thousand edits since I started this, which was in 2016. So that could be anything from fixing a misspelling to rewriting an entire page with one push of a button. It doesn't really judge that, so it's a little bit hard. But generally, that is a lot. They get in Wikipedia, they give you rankings for how many edits you've done over a period of time, and I'm considered in a category now because of that number as a veteran editor. It's like the 5th category up. But by the way, there are people with hundreds of thousands of edits. So now, maybe they're not writing entire articles ever. I don't know. There are some people who control bots. There are little programs they've written, and they go around to Wikipedia pages by program, and they check things and they'll fix things, and those count for them too. I don't use those. So there's actually one guy who made the national press by the most proficient Wikipedia editor in the world, because he had literally 1 million edits in a year. It's just not possible to do that manually. It's questionable. But so I've written 20 articles, 21 if I count yours, which no longer exists. We can talk about that.
We don't have to talk about that.
But so those are articles I've either written from scratch. They didn't exist at all, or they were there as like a few paragraphs, and I expanded them to something good and meaningful. So 20 isn't a large number, but I've also done those we count with a tool. That Kyle Pollack, the data skeptic from his podcast, he helped us out, and he wrote a tool for us that goes and interrogates that for each of our editors, and for Susan for all the categories of things. She can tell you how many, like anything having to do with anti-vax or space science, have all separately. It's amazing. And of course by editor. So if I put my name in, it shows I have 11,000 edits, and it shows my 20 articles. But I've touched probably thousands of articles. Okay. Maybe it's just improving the lead, which is the part in front of the table of contents. A lot of people, frankly, they'll open a page because they heard about something, they'll Google it. Oh, what's this? They read the first 2 paragraphs before the table of contents, and that's it. That's enough. They don't. Right. So we find that's very important to get that right? If it's a psychics page, we don't want it to just say, this guy's amazing, he talks to dead people, right? We wanted to say, well, he claims he talks to dead people, and by the way, he's been stung in the New York Times, which proves he's a fraud. I'm just making up one particular case out of the thin air.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the kind of thing we do.
So because that's kind of like you're reading the abstract of like an academic paper. You're reading the first paragraph or two that's available, and then most people don't read the bulk of the study.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. I usually read it and see if it's interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then if it's interesting enough to you, you'll go through it. And of course, what we hope, people say, well, Wikipedia is not accurate. Well, just in general, that's not a true statement anymore. Because for the pages that matter, like there have been independent surveys which show it's as accurate as, say, Encyclopedia Britannica. But regardless, even Encyclopedia Britannica, you shouldn't believe one thing that's written. You need to go to the citations, because Wikipedia only approves certain types of citations, reliable sources, and then you go to look at those and see if they back up what was written on the page. I mean, clearly you know how to do that because that's what you do when you do this kind of thing for research. Okay.
So let me ask you, like, for you, because you're extremely passionate about this. I've seen you're all in with this project, and I love it. I love the enthusiasm that you have. So to you, why is this important work? Especially because you're coming from a skeptical activist point of view.
Yeah.
And we can touch, actually, there's two questions. Why is it important to you? And do you think there's maybe a bias because you're coming in from that position? So first,
well, why is it important? Well, yeah, it's important for the reason that I kind of gave with the example of my friend. There are certain people who have the wrong understanding of reality, and they've gotten there in such a way, and they've been there so long, and they have a circle of friends, and they're in a bubble, and just stumbling upon something, or you even telling them that they're wrong and this is the real data, or look at this data, it's not going to go anywhere. But there's another hopefully large group of people who are trying to decide what the truth is. It might be as something unimportant like does Bigfoot exist, but it might be whether is the science of vaccines real? Is it safe? Or is this thing I keep hearing from my friends that it's going to, in this case for the COVID vaccine, change my DNA, or inject a microchip from Bill Gates? Is that right? So if you Google that, you get Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is in fact the fourth most traversed website in the English-speaking world, and that's amazing, because the only ones above it are Google. It's really not a website, but they count that. YouTube, Facebook. So those three, and then there's Wikipedia, right? And of course, if you look up something in Google, it often points you to the lead paragraph of Wikipedia.
Right.
So it's very important for people who are actually looking for information before they fall down the rabbit hole and go in the wrong direction about something, that they can find the correct information, the scientifically validated information about a subject that they're looking for. So that's why I'm really, adamant about putting that information out there, especially on the subjects where it could be, life or death.
Yeah, exactly. With vaccines, I mean, that's a big issue, obviously, lately. And I'm done. I'm actually I have my 2 shots, and today marked my 10th day, and that's what they advised me.
10 days after the second vaccine.
Yeah,
okay. Very nice.
So I got my full efficiency going on. I'm rocking it. So
mine's April 1st, so that might be, I don't know, April Fool's Day, but yeah.
Well, I agree. It's important to get this information out there, and you're right. I mean, when I do Google, and that's funny. Like, Google is a search engine. It's not an information source. So yeah, when I do Google something, usually it is Wikipedia that comes up first.
Yep. And these days, if you ask your personal assistant something too, it'll read you back from Wikipedia.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important. That's where you get your information. That's where your starting point is. And so for all the investigations I've done, all the articles I've written, it's usually Wikipedia's starting point for a lot of the information. And then when it's a well-written one, there's a lot of citations, a lot of references that are so handy. And that's important. I mean, how do you know what is your most cited article that you've worked on? Like, how many citations were there?
So we're talking about an article in Wikipedia, not Skeptical Inquirer, right?
Right.
So clear on this?
Any idea?
I can have my computer right in front of me.
Isn't that nice?
This is handy for not being in person in your office.
And while you're looking it up, again, anybody in the chat room, if you have questions for Rob, like JD.
So I'm looking at it. All right, I did my first project, my graduation project to become a GSoW Guerrilla Skeptics editor, was the astronomer Alan Hale, who's the first name in the Hale-Bopp comet. Right, he discovered it. And so I wrote the article for him. It was like 2 or 3 paragraphs, and now it's got 36 citations on it. So that's a reasonable number.
Yeah.
I mean, there are controversial topics that perhaps have more just like to prove the point of something, but that's considered a reasonable number for most subjects.
Well, that's good, and that's the beauty of it. I love that because I can go down and check all the references. I can get more information and read the full studies.
Yep.
Tomorrow night I have another podcast that I do, and we're actually tackling the topic of Reiki, and we're going to be discussing it. And my first stop was Wikipedia, and I was able to find meta studies on there, and I was
cool.
Great! Printed them out, started reading through them. So it's always good. There is a question here.
I'm sure I worked that page. That's one of the other topics I like, pseudoscience stuff. Yeah, pseudoscience, alternative medicines. Yeah.
So JD is asking. Rob, you said you started editing Wikipedia in 2016. What would you say was the overall quality of the majority of articles at the time?
Oh, JD, I don't know if I can answer that. There's like literally millions, maybe it's
millions of articles.
Million articles, and I've never seen any kind of survey that would give me that answer. So I'll have to do what skeptics and scientists say all the time. I don't know.
What? That's an actual answer? You can say that?
Yeah, but I will. Let me give you a trend. I'll give you a trend analysis.
Sure.
that I can do from just what I know of history. So when the encyclopedia started, they were desperate. JD said Reiki. Yes.
Reiki. What did I say? I thought I said Reiki.
So
you might work. Shut up, JD.
When the encyclopedia worked, they were anxious to get articles written, right? Because it was a blank slate. Mm-hmm. So, and that's number one. They wanted material. And the second one, they didn't have a lot of support as administration yet. So it was really easy to put shit on there. And my niece is an example. She told me much later that when she was, I think she said in middle school, she had to write a paper for some project. And she needed something for citations. So she couldn't find anything. So she wrote a Wikipedia article with fake citations in order to cite in her paper. And it stayed there for, she said, years later, it was still there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that was the early days. So occasionally you'll still find something that was written that long ago that's still there. And maybe it hasn't been, rung any bells. But it's rare because people stumble on things, and you can suggest an article for deletion. I've done that myself a lot of times. Okay. The other thing is now if you write an article, and this has been true for probably 10 years or so, if you try to write an article, that gets flagged in the computer system, and administrators or other editors who volunteer to do this are told, and they go and review it. So there's no way you're going to put anything crappy on there, right? You can write a fantastic article about a former ghost hunter who turned to a skeptical spokesperson and have 30 freaking citations on it, and people can come along and review it and say, no, it's not good enough. Goodbye. Yeah. just a random thought there. Kenny Biddle.
Oh man.
Have you ever told this story, Kenny?
I have not, because it's just
it's too painful.
I never got around to it. That's all. I mean, I enjoy what I do, so I don't dwell in the past, damn it.
Should I not tell the story?
Go ahead. You can tell it.
When I met Kenny, it was my first skeptical conference. I went to CSICon 2017, and his was the very first thing I attended, which is his workshop that told you basically how they fake ghost photographs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it looked like you were frozen there. You scared me because that's what happened when we were prepping.
Sorry. It's all good.
So when I got home after the whole conference, I said, wow, this Kenny Biddle dude, this is like really impressive. He used to believe in ghosts and he used to try to prove it. Now he realizes, no, that was faulty logic and the data was wrong. And he's now on the side of showing what he was doing wrong and what other people are still doing wrong. Let me look him up on Wikipedia. And there was no Wikipedia article. So I had just started this. I said, wow, I have to write an article for Kenny Biddle. So I wrote one. I thought it was damn good. Like I said, 30 citations. He had like been written up in Popular Mechanics, People Magazine, all over the freaking place. Everything that's considered important. And yet, when it came time for the review, there were big arguments. He doesn't pass the notability. That's what they call it in Wikipedia, notability requirement. So Wikipedia is awful with that. If you were a ball player in one soccer match in professional league, you get a page. Right? So they have separate notability requirements depending what your profession is. But if you're a scientist or an academic, which Kenny would have to be under because there's no general skeptic category,
right?
That's a very high bar. They don't want every person who's ever written a paper. They don't want everyone who's a professor in a university in there. So you have to meet all these requirements. And for a skeptic who's not actually an academic, that's an even higher bar, therefore. And so, it didn't matter. Kenny was in the New York Times. We couldn't make it stick. And we've had this issue with other scientists and skeptics before. So, we try our best and occasionally we succeed. And unfortunately, so far with Kenny, we haven't made it. But he keeps doing things to succeed, like he became a fellow for CSI, and that's another plus. So, one day we'll add a few more of those things and we'll get your page back up on Wikipedia.
I showed up every chance I get. Love it.
I didn't know if you had told anybody about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're kidding. As soon as I was waiting for the official announcement as much as I could because I got the email from Barry letting me know like that they had voted on it and that I was invited to be a fellow. And I was like, holy shit, dream come true. Okay, great. And he's like, the official announcement will come out. So. Unfortunately, it was like right before Randy passed. So when Randy passed, they shifted everything, which I'm totally okay with because I love the guy. But it got pushed off, and I was like, well, I'm not waiting because I'm so excited, and I got my freaking plaque in the mail. So guess what? I'm telling everyone.
Am I allowed to post in comments? I don't see how I can do that. Maybe
you can't post from there. From
where
you are.
Okay. Anyway, anyone wants to Google this. I interviewed Kenny for Skeptical Inquirer, and the title is Meet CSI's newest fellow, Kenny Biddle. So yeah.
I can post that article a little bit. I just posted the link for because I do have a Wikipedia page, but it's in Africa.
Afrikaans, that's true.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So we kind of got around the restriction. When we realized all right. So first of all, Wikipedia is not a monolithic thing. So every language besides English, every language has its own rules and regulations and organization that kind of monitors it. And many of them are much more lax than the English version. So Afrikaans, the language of South Africa, is one of those that is not so strict. And we have an editor who translates into and writes new articles in that language. And he said, hey, I can do Kenny Biddle. And there we go. So Kenny's on Afrikaans.
Yay.
And if you do that in a browser, that automatically translates to plain old English. There
yes. It is. Well, it doesn't. It comes up with a little box and it says, do you want it in English? And just click on it. Yeah. And it popped up. So yeah, very cool. It's nice. I got a picture of me and Joe Nickel. And that's nice. I like it. I got another question here for you. It says, very broad question. What was your experience like working as a spacecraft designer?
Oh, it's a long story. I don't know if we want to get into that now.
Can you make it brief?
You have to sign certain paperwork that you're not going to tell anyone about the alien technology that you've reverse engineered. And it's a lot of secret stuff. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, that's good. That's a good way to keep it short. A lot of secret stuff. Can't tell you. That's all good. We'll leave it at that then. We'll keep moving on.
So I will say, I'll bring it back to the world of skepticism. So when I was doing most of that, I never heard of the skeptic problem with, the earth is flat, right? Because if the earth is flat, and if anyone of you watching this have looked into this, they don't believe there's any satellites, right? So what I was doing was a figment of my imagination, or I was being paid large sums of money, reasonable sums of money, to do nothing, because there are no satellites, because you can't put anything in orbit around a flat disk with a dome on it. Right. So, right? You're right. So, it boggled my mind when I got into skepticism to find out that this movement is actually growing. More and more people are believing this nonsense. They're having national, international conventions on it. It's astounding. I've heard people, in all sincerity, a lot of people think these are just pose, but no, there are some of them, no doubt, like to play games. But these people, by and large, are so serious about this that it's become a religion to them. And if you don't believe that, go watch the documentary from Netflix, Behind the Curve.
Behind the Curve. That's right. A good one.
It's a good one. It doesn't promote flat eartherism, but it shows you what this movement is about and why these people believe it. And it's scary shit. Yeah.
Not only what they believe, but why they believe it, and the entire mentality of that culture, of that community, is just mind-boggling.
If you believe that, you believe every other conspiracy, because why not, right? If the Earth governments have all gotten together enough to tell you that the Earth is a different shape than it really is, then they're lying about everything else, including the vaccines and everything.
Right.
It's a very dangerous. I almost want to say it's a gateway drug. I don't know if it's the start or the things start and people go that far into it, but it just, the people in that culture, they don't believe any science or anything that any authority figures in a government, any scientific consensus tells them, if it goes against what they already come to believe about the Earth being flat. Right. And of course, we didn't go to the moon. I worked on space technology. People I worked with at retirement age when I started had worked on the Apollo missions, including my wife's uncle. No, they're all just lying, because there either is no moon, it's just a projection on the dome, or, we can't get to it because of the dome, or some shit like that.
Right. So what was your, the articles that you wrote from scratch on Wikipedia, what was your favorite and why?
Good question. I'm actually going to look at
having good questions.
Yes, I'm actually going to look at my list so I don't speak out of turn here. I have a page where I keep track of all this stuff. So maybe one of my favorites was, so actually I've done 6 Did You Know? And Wikipedia runs this every day on its main page, and they highlight 8 articles from all of the new ones that are written. And I have had 6 that made that list. And probably Bob Nygaard, maybe that was my favorite one. And maybe Bob Senker. So 2 Bobs, Bob Nygaard and Bob Senker. I'll say
that's a good segue into our next topic, because Bob Nygaard is somebody I would really love to sit down and talk to as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that page and Bob Nygaard, and we can get into psychics.
Can I tell you about Bob Senker first, just because it'll be short?
Yes, absolutely.
And then we can go into the longer.
You can do whatever you want. This is your show.
Yeah. Okay, so Senker I brought up kind of as a segue because I worked with him designing spacecraft, and so he retired. He's older than I am. By the time I became Wikipedia editor, he wasn't working anymore, but he flew on the space shuttle. So he was going around, after he worked for several years, being paid by RCA. To just advertise, essentially promote the organization that, hey, an RCA astronaut flew on the space shuttle and this is what we did. It was very cool. I actually got to drive him to a place in his NASA flight suit because he was speaking at the place my wife worked. So that was the coolest thing. So fast forward decades, and I became a Guerrilla Skeptics editor, and I looked him up, and he had a 2-paragraph page. And someone wrote on the talk page in Wikipedia, every article has a talk page where editors discuss what should be on the page or not. And basically it was, this is just like a resume. Why is this on here? We should delete this. This is an astronaut. At the time, 300 people ever had gone into Earth orbit. Are you freaking kidding me? So I took it upon myself to expand it to a very nice, I must say, article. It actually got a fantastic ranking, which I was happy with when they reviewed it. I recontacted with Bob to get some information from him, and it was a really cool project. But anyway, so that was my one intersection of my aerospace career with the whole skeptic and Guerrilla Skeptic thing.
Very cool.
So yes, you asked me about Bob Nygaard. So I was riding home from work after having listened to a podcast where this gentleman named Bob Nygaard was interviewed. He was a psychic detective. Now, I don't mean the kind of psychics who claim that they're detectives and help the police. He was a private eye who busted psychics. So I should say, actually, right, he was a psychic fraud detective.
Okay.
And it was a fantastic interview. Derek from Skepticality interviewed him, and I had never heard of this before. Not only, well, by this, I mean this problem that he was talking about, which he had made a new career fighting. And it's not that people go and spend $10 or $30 or $100, paying for tarot card readings or palm reading or horoscope or a psychic reading or even a medium, but it's that people get taken for their life savings by these people. And it's not an unusual thing. I don't know that there are numbers on this, but Bob is the only person doing this full time, maybe at all, because he stumbled into it. We could talk about that, or you can talk about that when you get him on the program. But he tells me he gets 4 or 5 contacts, emails, or calls a day, people begging him for help because they've lost tens, hundreds, or millions of dollars individually to one of these con artists. And I was blown away. So one of the other things that makes me passionate, besides trying to get good information to people, we talked about before,
right,
is trying to make people not get taken by the snake oil salesmen and con artists in this world. And so this is a big topic of importance to me. Mediums and psychics and the like, who will, as a minimum, take you for hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars if you'll give it to them. And the worst of the worst, the con artists who will take you for literally your life savings.
Yeah.
So I went home, and again, Bob did not have a Wikipedia article, so I wrote one for him. That was a good effort, but it was easy to do because he was published. He had notability. He was published in pretty much every newspaper across the country, because every time he busted a psychic for taking that kind of money from people, it became news, and he was interviewed, and that sort of thing. So it was easy to get his page to stick. There was no question about it. Right. And yeah, so I wrote a Wikipedia page for Bob Nygaard.
So let's get into psychics. Let's just jump right in. So we actually did a presentation together. We did 2 parts of our presentation.
Did we?
Yeah, we did. We talked about
before in the before days.
In the before days when we were able to hang out in person.
That was the last thing I did with anyone in the before days, in the before time. It literally is. Right? Wow. When was that? It must have been late April.
That was, yeah, because I think
March.
I think we were talking about it. I think we were talking about it. It was before.
No, it couldn't have been late April. So it was probably early March, and then the lockdown happened mid-March.
Yeah.
And I've been in my bunker ever since. So yeah.
I can see your bunker in the background. That's nice. But yeah, that's the last thing we did. But we did one together. You also gave I don't know if it was before or after, but obviously it had to be before, but you gave a similar presentation at CSICon.
Yeah, since I got so all right, so let's go back a little bit again. So
sure.
once I wrote the Wikipedia article for Bob Nygaard, and then fast forwarding just a little bit, I got the job of writing for Skeptical Inquirer. I decided, here's another platform I can tell this story. And not only did I interview Bob Nygaard for Skeptical Inquirer, 2-part interview, I think, but I then wrote a general story about this problem, the problem of psychic fraud, and what's the harm, right? That's the kind of thing we skeptics say. Because people, what's the harm? Well, this is the harm. It's what was called, what's the harm in believing in psychics?
Right.
And I published that. And then the organization that publishes Skeptical Inquirer, at their annual conference, they have they invite well-known speakers, people who are names like Kenny Biddle, to draw people to come to the conference. But they save a part of the last day. It's the very last thing, in fact, for what they call the Sunday paper presentations. Mm-hmm. And they let people who are not known and aren't used to this sort of thing submit a proposal to present. And I wrote a proposal with that paper, right? What's the harm in believing in psychics? And I was amazingly accepted. And I think that was in March or April of 2018. And in October, I, for the very first time, took a big stage to speak in front of 600, 700 people about the subject, and that was quite a thrill to be actually a speaker at only the second CSICon I'd ever been at. Awesome. And yes, after that, I repeated it several times. Once was with Kenny at a local skeptics group. I did it for the Philadelphia Association. No, I was going to do it. That was canceled because of pandemic. We'll probably do that later. I did it online for Zoom for a lot of places since, though, because I feel very passionate about that. So if I can get the word for people, and it's usually skeptics know this, but they often have somebody in the family. I've met people like that. Oh yeah, my mother-in-law is heavy into seeing this medium, and I get them to give them the information, and maybe some people it helps. So
what is the harm?
What is the harm?
That's the big question. What's the harm of psychics like this? I mean, you obviously you mentioned the financial burden. I mean, that's when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars,
hundreds and millions. So just to give you an idea how much money these people make, right? There's an American Federation of Certified Psychics and Mediums, right? They're in New York. I don't know what % of American psychics are in that, but this is where you can Google it and get the statistics from, which is what I did for my presentation. I've pulled it up here, so I'm not just talking out of my ass. $2 billion is the psychic business national revenue, and this is already from 6 years ago data.
And that's what,
2.1 billion with a B dollars. Now that's the admitted take, right? And you can picture this. This is an organization that's their members are telling them how much they made. Well, do you think they're telling them like if they were given $100 cash, or or the guy pays that sort of way? No, it must be credit card receipts, right? First off, so that's I would say a tiny number compared to reality. First off, and second off, it does not include the scams that I'm going to talk to in a bit. Because no one's going to say, hey, yeah, I ripped off somebody for $5 million. Add that to my revenue stream, right? So that's not included in this number. This is just I would say, cash dealings that psychics in this organization make. Who knows how you extrapolate that to everybody and to under the table cash. Mm-hmm. And they also have another set of interesting numbers of how much their members make. And whenever I talk about this, I always say, please don't take this as career advice. So they say their average member makes $150,000 a year. A reasonably successful person in their organization, $500,000 a year. And the names that get pushed to television that you see them every day in daytime TV, 5 million plus.
Wow. Again,
please, not career advice. I don't want to hear about it.
That's a lot of money. Oh
right.
My goodness.
Right. So and here's the reason. So I have another chart which is money spent on psychics, and this is only 4 years old. So this was an interesting from the same organization again. So this is what was admitted to. So they have a table that starts at if you spent $1,000 in a year on the psychic, right? Mm-hmm. And then what if you spent $5,000? What if you spent $10,000? And it breaks it up by gender ratio. So interestingly, at that fairly small number, it's still a lot to me, but if you're spending $1,000 seeing psychics, it's a 6-to-1 gender ratio, women to men. If you go to you're spending over $10,000, it's a 870-to-1 gender ratio.
Wow.
You can make of that what you will.
Wow. Well, you know what? I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. And I'm speaking from experiences of going to psychic fairs because there's local psychic fairs that I've been to, and it's dominated by females. Dominated. Both the psychics / mediums and the attendees. And
it's interesting that most of the famous psychics are male. That's
yeah. That's a mind-boggling thing because it's like besides Teresa Caputo, Sylvia Brown, but John Edwards, and
Tyler Henry,
Thomas
John. I mean, Chip Coffey. The names go on and on. And it's mostly,
right. Yeah. And then also when I visited Lilydale, I went there for a day, and I was really surprised. And I've said this a couple times on the show where I was really surprised that I was one of very, very few men, and most of the other men were just there to
tag-alongs.
They were drug along. They were holding the bags while their wives or girlfriends went and did readings and this and that. I mean, I was one of the few that was there because I want to see what was going on. Yeah, and that seems,
I've heard this from other people from the Square and the Strange podcast. Both Ben Radford and Celestia Ward went, I think, independently to, maybe it was John Edward. I might be misspeaking there, but it was some big psychic reading in a giant auditorium, and they both commented on that too.
Mm-hmm. So
I want to say, a lot of people say, well, women are, gullible and they don't think through things, but it depends on the paranormal and alt med and whatever thing, because there are different ones that are mostly men. So, right, if you go to a UFO conference, probably Bigfoot conference, even maybe Loch Ness Monster, my impression from seeing those on documentaries, like, that's almost all men. So it's like interesting for some reason, the gender split in different fields of woo. But definitely the psychics, maybe because it tends to pull on emotions and things like that. I don't know.
When did I do? I forget. I was on a show and it was a podcast, somebody's podcast, and it just came up. And I think historically it was dominated by females, because I think at the time when we're talking about the early or the late 1800s or early 1900s, at the time it was a great opportunity for females, because in that time frame they did not hold important jobs. They were not allowed to speak up or speak against a lot of things, and this afforded the opportunity where they could do almost whatever they wanted.
Yep.
You could speak out, you could curse, you could do vulgar things, you could say whatever you wanted.
Plus, you had the power, right? You had the power over these people.
They had the power. Well, it was more like you were channeling something. So it wasn't really the woman that was psychic. It was the spirits that were channeling through them that were causing all these issues. If they spoke out or got feisty. But it was a position of power and wealth. I mean, it was a great paying job for doing this, and I think that's historically that's why I think it was dominated by women in the beginning.
Okay,
but that's just an opinion. I'm not sure if that's right or not.
Hey, so you asked me about what's the harm, and I didn't really get to that point. So I started talking about like the money, but I have a few examples that I remember that I can talk about, which are like just astounding. But so these are Bob Nygaard's cases, which is why I know about them, and I wrote them in Wikipedia. They're in his article, and I also talked about them on stage at some length. So, all right. So one was a psychic named Priscilla Del Moro, and she convinced her male client, interesting, in this case was a male, that who came to her because he was in love with a woman on Facebook or some social media who wouldn't give him the time of day. He felt like he was stalking her and, wanted to be more than friends. So, of course, Del Moro said, well, I can fix that for you. The only reason there's a bad aura about you, you're kept apart by this aura, and I can fix that. So he paid her hundreds of thousands of dollars over many years at many sessions where Del Moro, well, it's getting better. And then I guess he would go on Facebook and see, well, yeah, she talked to me today, so I guess your work is working. He just kept paying her and paying her. And then the woman that he was infatuated with died, Michelle. You think that'd be the end of the story. But no, Del Moro said, I can reincarnate her soul into another woman's body for you. And he kept going with it. $700,000.
Wow.
That will take.
Wow.
Yeah. And so how could somebody fall for this? Well, if you have the mindset where the paranormal is real and someone, you go into their psychic shop for the first time and they pull a trick on you and they pull blood out of an egg or something, and you're prone to believe in these things to begin with, she's just proven to you that she's mystical and magical. And anything she tells you, you're going to believe. And that's a problem.
Yeah. And I think emotions have a big play in it too. I mean, if you're hurting, and you become pretty much desperate for any way,
right. And the problem here is, as I mentioned with that one, it was like, he was desperate for this woman's affection, and she didn't get it. But more often the stories I hear from Nygard are they convince them there's a problem where there isn't a problem at all. And so here's the last one I'll tell you about. Sherry Uwanowicz is the psychic. She said a witch placed a curse on her client's family, and only she could prevent them all from coming to harm. So, obviously she tricked her in some way to believing she had these powers, because this was a Brazilian medical student in the US studying at some medical school. 7 years she paid her to take the curses off her family. She quit medical school and became a stripper, because medical school, costs money and strippers make money. Her family passed an inheritance to her, and she gave it all to Jovanovic, sold her house, $1.6 million.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the harm.
And that's the sign of desperation. That's where it comes into, because you're talking about people that are desperate for something to happen. And
yep.
I think the mentality is once you start seeing, like for a family that has curses all the time, and they're paying to have these curses removed all the time. It's easy once the target is in that mindset and something bad happens, it's easy to say, well, that's the curse.
Yep. Confirmation bias kicks in. Yep.
Yeah. That's what it is. You better come here and let me take that curse off before something even worse happens. Yeah, and then you want to.
And then people also say, well, all right, after you gave them the first 10,000 and nothing happened, like, why didn't you just stop then? There's a fallacy. I'm also into logical fallacies, by the way. I love writing about those, called the sunk cost fallacy. And that's just a human thing. It's like, you've spent either time or money or effort in doing something, and you don't want to admit that that was a waste of time, money, or effort. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it's easier to keep going on with it than admit you were wrong and made a mistake.
I think we can also add in confirmation bias on the other end, because if, say, you pay to have this curse lifted, and for the next week, nothing bad happens.
Yep.
You think that's a hit because I went, the curse was removed, it worked. This is great. I love this. But then maybe 2 weeks later, something bad happens. And you go back to that psychic, and
you need a reinforcement. Yeah.
Yeah. You need a booster shot.
Yeah.
There you go. We need to fix it, because this is a different curse now. Somebody else hates you or something, and they cursed you with a different curse. So now we have to take care of that one. And it's a vicious circular cycle. I mean, it just keeps going around and around.
So there's one other aspect of this that I've talked about in the presentation besides what's the harm. It's like, who's to blame for this? That's like sort of the other part of the talk that I give. And one of them, I look at it from the perspective of religious belief. There was a Pew Research poll in 2018 that surveyed Americans, and it broke down their form of, I don't know why it's just Christianity. They have Protestant, evangelical, Catholic, mainline, and they break that down. And then there's unaffiliated, atheist, agnostic, nothing in particular. So on average, what's the belief in psychics in the population? It's 41%, Kenny. Almost one half of people believe in this, right? That's astounding to me right off the bat. So in those Christian perspectives, it goes from, looks like 33 to 46 in that range. 40 Catholics are the highest, oddly, of the Christian, maybe. So again, 41-ish average, 46 for Catholics, it looks like the high. If you're an atheist, it's 10. So not believing in God gives you some sort of an inoculation against being tricked this way. But it's not a full inoculation, just like the vaccines aren't full. Right? So still, 10% of it, people who say, I do not believe in a deity, still believe in psychics and mediums, which boggles my mind. But that's like one, it's essentially you're only 25% as likely to get taken if you're an atheist versus if you're a standard Christian.
I think there's also, the more I think about this, and Bob made a good comment. Go ahead.
If you're nothing in particular, however, right, you don't want to say you're an atheist, and you're not a Christian, and I assume that means you're not any other religion. You're just listed as nothing in particular. Guess what that is?
0?
No, that's 55%. You're higher.
Wow.
So, yeah. So if you believe in spiritual stuff, but you don't buy the general religious doctrine, you're even more likely to believe in it than a standard vanilla Christian.
I could see that. Because it's like the universal energy drink, everyone. Yep. That's one of our rules. If anybody misuses the word energy, it's time to drink. Oh my goodness. So Bob made a good comment here that he's sure there's an addiction tied to it, and I would agree that, and I think the addiction part is the almost like a euphoria feeling, euphoric feeling that you get when you get good news, and I would think that there is an aspect of control involved as well, because if you're going to a psychic, if things are going bad in your life, and you go to somebody that claims they can remove a curse and make your life better, and you get that confirmation bias because you have like a few days or a week or so, or even longer, where nothing bad happens. You're like, oh, great, this is cool. And then something bad happens again. There's that aspect of control. You want control over your life. And you think, yeah, unfortunately, it's the default response where, oh, this happened before. I went and had the curse removed and it worked. I'm going to go and do it again because this is how I control it. This is what I'm doing. And I think that gives the client, for lack of a better word, some sense of control over their lives.
All right. Oh, or here's one other story of how religiosity can play into it too. And, psychics take advantage of this because they know it. It's a good shot just assuming someone's religious when they walk into the door, because more than likely those are the people who are going to go, right? So there was a woman who was pregnant and was concerned she was going to have a miscarriage because she had one. The previous pregnancy failed. And so she went to the psychic to get, a prediction and maybe whatever. And the psychic took advantage of that, saying, oh, there's a bad aura around you, and you're going to have to spend a whole bunch of money in order to, make sure it doesn't happen again, which that must have played with the woman's head. But that wasn't the end of it. It was, oh, I've contacted the fetus, which was aborted prematurely, and it's burning in some purgatory limbo thing. And I'm going to need to do magic spells to get it out, which cost a lot of money for me to learn those lessons.
Wow. That's like a level or two below just conning someone.
It's inhuman.
That's horrible.
Yeah, as Bob tells me, these people have no consciousness, none at all.
All right, we have a couple questions I want to get to. From YouTube, we have a Mr. Kruger that says, not exactly a psychic, but how relevant are folks like Peter Popoff these days? I don't know what you know. I know he's still around.
I think he sells magic water now.
He does, and do I have it? I have it. I have it, dude.
Of course you do, but you'll never find it in that room.
No, you know what? It's in my other collection. But I'll show you something.
I have to tell people I was in that room, and in person it seems even more crowded than it looks on the video.
Oh, it's not there. I have to find it. I have a box that's like this, a shoebox, that is filled because I made the mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I wanted to see what would happen. I saw the commercial where he was like, oh, this is like holy water from God, and you need this. And all you got to do is like call this number. So I did, and I got the holy water, and it almost looks like when you go to the hospital and you get the little pouches of saline, the little tiny capsules. I mean, it's kind of like that, but it has his name on it. And after that, it was like 2 or 3 envelopes a week that I was getting from him.
Requesting money for what?
Asking for money. And probably at least once a week, there was another little novelty. One was a piece of string. It was a piece of string that was like special string that if I did like put it under my pillow and danced on the bed, rotating 3 times.
Why is this legal? Why is all of this legal in this country?
But yeah, it went on for several weeks, and I have I'm going to wait until you start telling a story, and then I'm going to look for it because I know it's right under the desk here, but it's a full box, and it's just tons of letters from him.
Well, I don't know if I have. Well, for those who don't know, Peter Popoff was a televangelist in, I want to say 70s, maybe 80s, but Yeah, so you could look him up on Wikipedia for the actual details, but my general remembrance of the story is, he had a huge faith healing congregation, and he was being observed by skeptics, and it was a lot of it was clear there were a lot of shenanigans going on, but they wanted to prove it. And James Randi went in with some help, and they used technology to intercept the radio transmissions that were going to Peter Popoff on stage while he was calling people up to be healed. And it was his wife. And one of the recordings they played was actually, "Hey, Petey, I hope you can hear me. Because if you can't, you're going to be in trouble tonight. The person in row 5 with the yellow sweater, she lives at 555 Nottingham." And you hear, "God is telling me she lives at 555 Nottingham, and she's got," what has she got? Okay. "She's got bone cancer." And it was like right on there in the recording. And they played it on a late night show, probably Carson, and it basically ruined him. But like the unsinkable rubber ducks, he's back selling magic water and whatever Kenny's got.
This is just a sample. This is one box, just a handful that I took, and there's still more in this box. But you'll see, like, he gives. This is Holy Land anointing oil. So there's actually oil in there. That's what he sent me. I don't know if I had the one with the string. Oh, wait. This was a little... I'm not even sure what this thing is.
It doesn't even say what it is? They just send it to you?
It does say it's like a little horn or something, but it's a piece of plastic. It's a little plastic toy that you should get out of a bubblegum machine.
So they send you this, you open it, you get that, and then what does the letter say? Please send us...
The letter... I'll open the letter for you so you can see how much. So I don't want to show you my address because I don't want freaks coming to visit me. But it's page, page with a whole bunch of fake crossing out and written notes. They're not actually written. Everything's printed. But page after page, and then there's a...
What's the gist?
Do not open until you read the entire letter, which, of course, I opened. And there's just more. And there's envelopes where you send donations back. And I actually, the last few, because it's the no postage necessary, I filled these up with trash. All the advertisements, all the ads I got on Sundays, I would rip them up and fill up these envelopes until I had to tape them closed, and I would send them back. And then that's when he stopped sending me stuff.
Only you.
Oh, man. But, yeah, every one of them asked for it. Thank you.
If you just ripped off that postage indicator and, like, put it on a package of lead weights or something, would they mail that?
I've done that, too, where I just started anything. Cardboard, anything that was heavy, I would just start putting it in there and sending it back. I mean, we're talking, like, they were packed. So that's what I know of Peter Popoff. And he's still doing it. You can still, late night on network television, you can still see the commercials. And so ridiculous.
So one of the other things I do, besides Guerrilla Skeptics and write for Skeptical Inquirer, is I've recently volunteered for an organization called Recovering from Religion, which we have a helpline and people call. And some people who are not part of mainstream religions but have a lot of New Age beliefs call us, and we actually help them too. So we have a whole section of discussions on these sorts of things. And in fact, there's one woman I was talking to recently who was convinced that their pastor could lengthen legs, because they call people up on the stage and one leg was longer than the other or shorter than the other, and they fixed that. And I said, okay. So I dug through very easily the skeptical world, and I found articles and videos on how that trick is done and sent it to her. She goes, "Oh, thank you." So, that got posted and that helped people. So, and also I have now been posting like your articles on ghosts, people who believe that as part of their, well, this proves as afterlife is real, so I should stay in my religion. Not so much, and I'm trying to help them out that way too.
Right. That's pretty, I want to get into that more. We still have time, but I want to get back to that. I got another question here from Bob. in the research you've come across, have you ever found a psychic that actually believed the filth they sell?
Well, so you want to answer that, Kenny? You've seen a lot.
So I come across. I'm friends with a lot of people that claim to be psychic,
and I met two of them, and
yeah. When you came here, you actually came here for one of my practice lectures, and met.
And that was the first time I've ever met or talked to anybody who claimed to have that ability. Yeah,
and most of them, I think, in my experience, most of them are genuine, and they really think they can do what they claim to do. And it's more of a general kind of thing. They're not used to being questioned. Especially detailed questions or pointed questions. So when you start asking, well, what do you do? What do you actually do? When you talk to somebody or you hear voices, are you hearing full words? Are you hearing just letters? Do you actually get an L or an E or an R? Or are you getting an actual word? Why can't you get last names? Why can't you get dates? Why can't they tell you that number is for a birthday or a marriage date? Why can't you get this stuff? So that causes a lot of confusion, but I think the people are mostly genuine. You get a sense of who is not, and I've come across quite a few people. I'm actually working on an article for one now, where they know they're full of shit, and they still do it because they know they're making a good living off of this, and they continue to do that, and that good living is too hard to give up. So they continue to do it. And that's where people like me and Ben Rafford and Susan Yu and all come in, and we say, hey, this is what we found. This is what's really going on. You really shouldn't be giving these people money. But yeah, for the most part, though,
you're getting emotionally invested in what they're saying.
Yeah. Right. For the most part, yes, I think the majority of people that I know that I'm friends with really do believe that what they're doing is real.
So you probably have met a different group of people than Mark Edward, if Susan's still online.
Yeah.
My impression, I've interviewed Mark Edward, who's a mentalist and was one of the star performers of Psychic Friends Network and lived this life for a long time, seeing what it was about. And my impression from what he said was most of the people he met, know what they're doing. Yeah, so it could be different groups of people. Yeah, and the two women I met at your house, I have to say, they seem genuine. They also, I don't think they charge people. It's like they help their friends when they get a message or whatever. So for some reason, they believe it, and they don't take advantage of people. Yeah, so I really have to wonder, just generally, if you really could tell everyone's mindset, what the percent would be of everyone in that industry. I don't know.
I think it's your group of friends, too. If you're around people that usually believe this kind of stuff or have these beliefs and their core beliefs, then you get that reinforcement from them. Because I've done it. I actually did it when we did our presentation together. I did a cold reading, or actually a hot reading. It was a hot reading on the crowd of skeptics, where I actually picked out 3 people and told them about family members and things that they did in the past. And it's easy to do. And if I was around people that already believed that, it would have been reinforcement. They would have told me how great a job I did. Like, that was amazing. Right. Oh my God. Can you do it again? Can you read me? And if I went along with it, I could totally change and become Kenny the Psychic. And start doing that.
I even read that, Ray Hyman believed he was doing it at one point, right? He's a famous skeptic, if people don't know. Was partly responsible, I think, for creating the Center for Inquiry.
Right.
Back in the Psychop days. And he was so good at it that he started to believe he was doing it for real.
Yeah.
And I think even, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, in his early days.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me that story, because I remember vaguely.
I'm going to have to reread the story, but I think he started out doing horoscopes. I think writing the horoscopes, and it got into a little bit more. I don't know if I'm getting the right person, but it started developing more and more, and he started answering letters from people, and they were really taking it seriously. I think that's how he's. I'm gonna have to write. I gotta write this down because I gotta look it up now.
Mhm.
But I really think that was part of his early career, getting off before he became the amazing Randy.
Mhm. Oh, Carl said Mark Edwards' book Psychic Blues is really, really good. And yes, it is. I interviewed him about it. And it's,
I do have that. It's actually right there.
He actually did a recent re-release as an audiobook with more material. So it's really good. Yeah.
So I have another question from JD. He says, this is a follow-up to Bob's question. Have you ever met an alleged psychic that you couldn't disprove? And if so, why?
Is that to me?
I guess, it's probably to both of us.
Yeah, you've met more than I have. But my first comment on that was it's not our responsibility to disprove it. Right?
That's right. I mean, that's the burden of proof. It's not really our job to do it, but we do it anyway.
And usually fairly easy. So there's this thing called the IIG, which is the
it's now the CFIIG now.
Right. So it's a CFIG. Right. So it's independent. Basically, it's a group that's associated with the Center for Inquiry that will give you $250,000 to prove you can do that or anything else that's psychic or paranormal. Guess what? Nobody's ever won it. Also, there was a $1 million challenge that was around for decades. Guess what? No one ever won it. So, at some point, the lack of proof becomes proof that the thing is not possible. That's all I'm saying. Can't ever say no one will ever come along that can do it, but it really seems it's just not real.
So I can address that a little bit more, this question at least, where there's plenty of psychics. I mean, there's a lot, and there's no way we can investigate all of them, because there's very few people that will take up that challenge. But those that I've chosen to investigate, I've been able to figure out what they're doing all the time. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that there were a lot of clues that were left. If you're willing to look, there's a lot of clues that are out there that you can find. And I mean, Susan has talked about this a lot, where it's really easy if they're getting spot on hits to simply go to social media, because number one, most people in the modern world are not private. It's really easy to find information. And with not only social media, but things like Ancestry and background checks, like for me, I have a subscription to one of the premier background check sites. So I can find information on people, and it's amazing. Within 5 minutes, you can find out so much about them. So it's very easy to figure out, okay, they're getting a lot of really good hits, like specific and detailed. Right. Something smells bad. We got to figure this out. And I mean, even there's been times where you look at video chats, and I've watched videos of psychics doing their online readings. And as they're talking it, or as they're just about to pick someone, as soon as they pick the person with their name on it, I can type it in and find the information almost as quick as they do. Yep. And I'm doing it myself. I don't have someone helping me, but I can do it. And I did it with Susan when she was I think I was on her show or her podcast, and I did it to her while we were doing the show. So that was fun.
So Susan writes articles about this sort of thing all the time. She's got a slew of recent ones in Skeptical Inquirer, Susan Gerbic, where she analyzes readings that these psychics, because of the pandemic, they've now all moved online. And so it's really easy to see who they're talking to. The name of the person they're reading is right there in the Zoom chat. And you could Google it in real time, just the same way they're talking to them. And guess what? They're just only given the information that's somewhere on their social media. And yet the people don't realize that. And sometimes it's like, it's as clear as mud what's going on. And I think Susan gave this as one example. So the psychic said something like, I'll use the name. It's your husband, Bill. Bill says, hello, And then the woman later says, damn, he hated the name Bill. He always only called himself William. Why would he call himself Bill? And then you Google it and you see the death certificate says the name that he didn't like because they didn't know. So it's like, that's what he found. So he just used that name.
Yeah.
You know, it's so freaking obvious when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like my name is Kenneth. I don't like the formal name. I've always gone by Kenny. I that's just me, you know, it's more laid back and relaxed. So when I see somebody actually, what did I do? Oh, I actually sent money to somebody for something, and it came up Kenneth Biddle. And for like 10 minutes, they were trying to figure out who sent the money until they messaged me and were like, dude, I didn't realize it was you, because I never hear that. And because I just don't use that name, but that's my formal name. And, you know, sometimes I do use it when I need to, or, you know, I have to. And when it shows up, it just looks fine.
Your passport, probably.
Right. So I know when I die, when I kick it, my obituary is going to say Kenneth, and it's going to be weird. So when that first comes up, if somebody's trying to do a psychic shit on me, you know, using me, then they're going to say Kenneth. And all you motherfuckers that are out there should know it's bullshit if it comes out that way.
Maybe in the afterlife you decided you really did like that name. You know, we'll never know. We can't prove you didn't.
All right. I have another question here. This is from Tim Vickers. Who could be more dangerous, the psychic that believes their ability or the outright fraud who has the most potential to do harm?
Interesting.
That
it's interesting. Well, like if they're psychotic, which in fact some people might be who hear voices, that could be dangerous because you never know what the voices are going to tell you to tell somebody. All right, that could be a problem too. I don't know, but if you're an outright fraud, you're definitely very dangerous.
Because I think if you're the outright fraud, I think you're looking for opportunities. Your goal is to make money. Your goal is to take everything you can from the mark. And once you have your mark and you know they're hooked, that's it. You know, you keep reeling it in. You keep stringing them along. Where I think someone that's genuine, that they just believe, they really believe that they have this. In my experience, at least, they are not greedy, or as greedy. But no, most of the time, I think, in my experience, again, the people that I know and interact with, they have not been greedy. They don't go out looking for, hey, how much can I get out of this person?
Yeah, I would agree. What I was saying was, but you could have an outlier who really is believing it and is psychotic and would do really harm. Right. Like, I don't know. I think Charles Manson believed the voices he was hearing or whatever. And, you know, he got people to kill people. So, yeah, that could hypothetically happen. But, yeah, obviously that wouldn't be the norm for that set of people.
Right. Right. Let me see. All right. We're caught up on the questions. That's good. So
let's talk about the sting you were involved with. Have you ever talked about that?
I have occasionally, yes. I've occasionally, like a little bit here and there. I don't know.
You probably never mentioned who the alter ego was who made your personality on Facebook.
I have not.
So Ed Caffrey, meet Ed Caffrey. So Kenny went as the character Ed Caffrey to Matt Fraser's public reading, and Donna, his wife, went as Zoe. And other people they brought along also had false personalities. And there was a team of people, including myself, who made those personalities real on Facebook. So we had Facebook profiles that were made up with those names, with all sorts of details that neither Kenny nor Donna nor anyone knew about. And they went to Matt Fraser's reading hoping to get called on. And the hope was that they'd catch Fraser in a hot reading, which means he would have gone to the Facebook profiles and started reading stuff about them that they, first off, had no knowledge of, and second, weren't true at all. So, yeah, I had Kenny, or Ed Caffrey, living in an apartment in Las Vegas that was haunted, and he was concerned the ghosts were in his vents, and he was coming to Philadelphia for a I think it was a bachelor party, and they were going to go see Matt. He was really excited because he wanted to ask about the ghosts. And then Kenny had to play that role.
That was so difficult. Like I remember, because the group of us, there were 6 of us. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there were 6 of us. that went to this, plus the reporter, Jack Hitt. And we went and we're hanging out at the bar before the gallery reading thing started. We're hanging at the bar. We're meeting other people that are going to the show. And I'm talking to these people. And the first awkward moment for me was that I wasn't married to my wife. So that was weird because I'm at a bar drinking and I like to have a good time, but I'm like, all right, so I can't like hang on my wife. I can't do it because we're just friends right now. Or something.
Well, you could have pretended to start having an affair or something. No one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Hey now.
Yeah, we all set up for role play. She had blue hair.
I know. But now I'm also on top of that. I have to talk to these people that are thoroughly into it. Like they full on wholeheartedly believe it.
Meaning the other people waiting to go into the reading.
Yes. And I have to pretend that, oh yeah, my place is haunted and I got ghosts and I can't wait to talk about the ghosts and stuff. And in my head, I'm screaming like, you stupid fuck, you don't believe this. Keep a straight face. Keep a straight face. Don't laugh. Don't smile. Because I kept doing that. Like I kept talking like, and I could feel my mouth starting going up like smiling. I don't believe this shit.
Plus you had those really cool glasses on that recorded everything.
Yes. Yeah. I had my spy glasses on, which, because I wasn't sure if we could record. So, and I probably shouldn't be saying that, but we were allowed. We had permission to record. So I did record. I just openly record it with my video camera. So, and that proved to be a mistake on Matt Fraser's part, because even though we didn't catch him in hot reading, we were able to get a lot of his techniques on camera. And then we had Mark Edward. He reviewed all the footage.
And Kenny wrote a really good article talking about how he was doing the cold reading. Yeah, so to be clear, the technique I was talking about before, hot reading, apparently, well, he didn't do it then, and maybe Matt doesn't do that. If you're really good at cold reading, you don't need to do that shit, right? And the problem is the people who are bad at cold reading, like I'll name some other people maybe later, but yeah, they do the hot reading because that's all they can do. Because when they do cold reading, they're really awful at it, and they would not be able to maintain an audience. But they have learned to use social media and death certificates and whatever else you can find online to make people believe they're in touch with their dead relatives. And yeah, they can't believe they're doing it for real because, they can't.
Right. JD follows up. He's saying he meant more so that was there anyone, either of us investigated that we were like, damn, I don't know how they did it. I can say for me, no, I don't think so. Because it's I guess I've been doing it long enough that, and again, I'm not bragging, but I've been doing it long enough that once I have a few little tiny hints, little tiny clues, I can usually find a bulk of information on somebody within seconds or a minute or two.
The amazing thing is that so many people who have seen psychics and are convinced, I have personal friends in that category. Two I can think off the top of my head, which is like, Rob, there is no way they could have gotten this information. And you know how they did it.
Yeah.
Right? But the problem is they don't know. And if you tell them, they've already been convinced it's real, so they don't want to hear it.
Right. And it is hard unless you just sit down. Like that's the best way to do it for me, is to sit down and say, all right, you know what? Here, bust out my laptop. Let's sit down next to me and we're going to go through this. I'm going to show you exactly where they got this information. And we're going to say, this was the reading on this date at this time. And this is when you posted on social media for the public, not private, but for the public. This is when it was posted. And one thing I've noticed is that even when you go to like psychic fairs, there's a sign up list. There's always a sign up sheet because you have to sign in and reserve your time slot. And you have to put your full name. You can't just put Kenny. You have to put your full name. So once you do that, it's really easy for an assistant to pick up their phone, put your name into social media, and while they're looking at you, compare it to whatever picture comes up. And it says, oh, okay, that person is coming back at 2:30. We got a half hour. Let me look through their page. And that gives you a lot of time where you can go through and get a little bit of details and just say, all right, you know what, when this person shows up, talk about their Sparky, their dog that died like 4 or 5 months ago, or maybe 2 years ago. Talk about their grandfather that passed away last year. There's a lot of little ways that come up. And once they get your name, and that's a big thing, once they get your name, man, it only takes a couple minutes to get information on you.
Oh, I'm looking at the chat, and Susan Gerbic just posted. That's right. She has an article that shows Matt doing hot reading on a reporter when he was on a TV show. I remember reading that now. So apparently he'll do that too.
Yeah.
So, but often cold reading is enough to convince people. So the two friends I was talking about, from what their description to me was, it was just cold reading, just lucky guesses, essentially, Barnum statements, or something like that. And it was enough to trigger them to give full confidence that this person is a psychic. And therefore, this is a quote from somebody I worked with who's an engineer, all the physics is wrong then because psychics are real because my friend is a psychic. And what her friend told her was what her deceased mother made for dinner, which was pierogies or something like that. Well, maybe, she guessed it because she knows your nationality or whatever and just threw that out. And maybe she says that to everyone. And if it happens to be right, you think she's real, but that was enough to do it. Right. And the other one went to a John Edwards public reading. Oh. And she came out with, I knew my ex-husband's name. There's no way he could have known that. And that proves that he's real. I said, do you know that South Park did a very special episode on him? Do you know what the name of it was? What was the name of that, Kenny?
Oh, I don't remember the name. That was great, though.
World's Biggest Douche or something like that.
Dude, that's it.
Right. So you're defending the one psychic, which has been labeled, is unbelievable. But, she told me, and immediately I said, well, okay, I don't know how he did it, but I can give you 3 options, which don't involve magical powers of speaking to the brain of a dead person. And we haven't talked again. She was very upset that I challenged the fact that it could have been real, which was bizarre to me.
I think, in my experience, when you challenge it, that's something people aren't used to. They're used to saying something and like, oh, I believe this, and I had this happen, and because it happened to me, this one time, it's real and genuine and this and that. And I think the majority of the time, their friends were like, oh, okay, cool. This is great. They're not used to being challenged. And when you bring it up and say, well, I could offer you several suggestions on how that was done. I can do it myself to you if you want. I can give you a reading. And it's not psychic. It's not superpowers. Although
I wish I was good at that. I've never really practiced that to do it. So this particular thing was, and I'm pretty sure this is what it was. So her husband's name was something like Bart. And she said, oh, he just came. By the way, this wasn't even a medium thing because it was her ex-husband, but not her dead husband. They were just divorced. So I was like, I don't know where the name was coming from, but, he, said, your husband's Bart. And he said, oh, no, my ex-husband. Okay. Well, all right. So that wasn't right on to begin with. I think that was the story. But the fact was, I said, are you sure he said Bart? He didn't say a name starting with a B. No, it was Bart. Do you have a recording of it? No, I don't. Okay. So kind of dropped it. And then I went home and I listened to the Oh No, Ross and Carrie podcast, coincidentally. And Ross and Carrie had gone to a psychic medium and, of course, taken notes. And that's what they do on that podcast. They report on what happened, right? Whatever event they went to. And I found it so amazing about what had happened between them at that psychic medium that I sent her a recording of it. And that was literally the last time I ever heard from her. So the thing was that Ross was telling the story of what he remembered. And he said the medium came over and said, your grandmother, who's passed away, Cynthia, some name like that. And Ross said, yeah, that was a good hit. She got my grandmother's name. And then Carrie looks at her notes. That's not what she said. She said Cynthia or Cindy or Susan or Smith. And Ross did not remember that.
Wow.
And they went there to essentially, debunk this and see what's going on. And he did not remember that. So what's the chances that my friend who only heard the one name, it was really the only one name, So I said, I'm not saying this is what happened, but here's an example of what it could have been. And she did not like that, apparently, because I was questioning her memory.
Right.
Right. And to somebody who's not a scientific skeptic, I remember it and it's true. or I witnessed it and it's true. And they don't understand the frailties of the human mind and the memory systems and whatever. And if you challenge that, they get personally insulted, which is fortunate.
And that's confirmation bias at its best. I mean, when you remember the hits and forget the misses, that's basically what it is. And exactly what you said. I mean, I do ask people to record sessions. Ask if you can record it, and because that tells you a lot right from the start. If the psychic says no, okay, I'm not going to record it, but that tells me something. Like, that gives me a heads up.
I also like how you gave me this little clicker, which when you go to one of these, like every time they ask you a question, there we go. One of those. You just silently click it and you come out and you say, oh, she asked me 1,000 questions. Well, so someone going in doesn't realize that. They just think they said one question. Like, I've heard this from other people. I think Mark Edward told me that. They might say, I'm seeing somebody in uniform. It might be a military, it might be a post office worker, it might be a UPS delivery, it might be the 5 things. And they'll say, oh, yeah, he worked for the UPS. And when they come out an hour later, he knew he worked for the UPS. Right. They don't realize they asked 20 questions or, which are all no, yes, to get to that one yes. They don't remember that. And that's another easy way it happens without anyone having to look on social media. It's just our minds are not set up to see we're being, fooled this way.
It's really easy to forget that you're supposed to be getting these predictions, or you're supposed, if they're telling you that they're talking to your dead loved one, then they should be having a conversation and telling you the answers. They should not be asking you questions. If they can see someone in a uniform, then see the fucking uniform.
Right.
It's basic. It's really basic. What's the uniform look like? Don't tell me it could be military, it could be postal, it could be this and that. It could be an ice cream shop. No, you should be able to see it if you say you see it.
What amazes me is how much the powers of people who have passed on have deteriorated in recent history, right? Because they used to be able to inhabit bodies, and if they spoke in ancient Egyptian, they can now speak in English with a funny accent. Now they can barely give their name. It's
right.
J, I'm seeing a G or J sound. That's quite amazing. I
mean, one of these days I actually have to put the link up for these counters because they were cheap. I got a whole bag of them. And at one point I was giving out a few when I did lectures. But these are invaluable because when you get into the habit of sitting down, keeping your hands folded or under the table or something like that, and you start clicking every time they ask you a question. And then when you're done, you look at it and go, holy shit, I sat there for 15 minutes and they asked me 38 questions. Wow. And I mean, that's like average. I was averaging at least 2 questions every minute. And
yeah. And if they don't do that, then that's a sign they're hot reading, right?
Yes. And it doesn't mean absolutely 100% they are, because we'd really have to prove it. But yeah, it's a red flag that if they're getting exact.
And you look into the other thing. Is all this available on social media?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, we forget. I know, at least for me, I post a lot of stuff. I post advertisements from promos. I post articles. So even on my personal page, sometimes I post things I probably shouldn't, but it gets out there. And when I see those, like, oh, your memories on Facebook pop up, I'm like, holy shit, when did I post that? But you get to see, like, oh, that's a picture I forgot that was up there. Oh, I was there then.
As Susan points out, what people don't realize is even if you're fairly good about not doing that, you might people don't are on Facebook, your friends and family can post about you, and they're not so good about protecting it, and they can link it that way. Right. So, yeah, let me bring this up. I don't remember hearing this ever spoken about before. In this regard, in this venue, like one of the reasons that, like, again, it's not proof there isn't, but evidence that it's not real. Or I'll say this is proof that evidence that the U.S. government does not believe it's real. Because I know people who believe in Project Alpha was, covered up, and all the sorts of things. The CIA really knows how to do this, and there's really people who are clairvoyant, and they could remote view and all that kind of stuff. And they know about this, and they're covering it up. Well, if they know about it, they're pretty stupid about it, because until I retired just now, I had a U.S. secret clearance. Okay, that means hypothetically in my brain is information that the release to another person is detrimental to the safety of the United States of America. Well, when we go through briefings to get that, and every year you got to renew it, and when you leave and you give your badges back, you go through briefings which basically say what you have to remember not to do and what you have to report to them if it happens. Like if somebody I'm on a trip and a vacation, and someone comes up to me and starts asking me about my job, I'm supposed to report them, that kind of thing, so they could be investigated. You'd think if they knew the psychic powers were real, they would, you could never go to see a psychic, never go to a psychic show or reading, because without you knowing, they can be taking these, dangerous secrets from your mind to sell to our enemies. No, guess what? That's not anywhere in our briefing. Are they so stupid that they know about this and don't tell the hundreds of thousands of people who have U.S. security clearance not to worry about this? To worry about this? Right? I mean, that's astounding to me that people believe the U.S. government, believes this is a real capability. And I know they don't.
Wow. On that note, I do a remote viewing challenge once in a while, and I did one last week, and I have the box here behind me, and I'm going to open it up because I enclosed an object in there last week, and remote viewing is one of those things. Project Stargate was a real government study to see if there was anything to remote viewing, and I think Ray Hyman chimed in on that, and he was, I think, mostly responsible for shutting it down.
We just had somebody write to Susan this week who was involved with that, and maybe Susan's on chat, she can remember the name, and he actually has a Wikipedia article, and he was slamming Wikipedia for calling remote viewing pseudoscience.
Wow.
Yeah, because the article is very well written on Wikipedia, and it says it's a pseudoscience, it's never been proved, and this guy who was involved with it did not like that.
All right, so I'm going to open this up. I'm going to give about a minute for everyone in the chat room to take a guess, your final guess on what's inside this box, the object that's inside here. And Rob, I want you to use your non-psychic mental powers to see if you can see inside of this box and tell me what it is.
Well, I did have my first shot of the Moderna vaccine, and it may have altered my DNA and given me some X-Men ability. So it's possible I could figure this out either by reading your mind or by seeing through the box with my X-ray vision somehow over this technology. I'll work on it.
You know what? I'm really disappointed me. The only thing that disappointed me about the vaccine shot was that when I asked the tech, does this give me mutant powers?
You didn't.
And I was the only one, apparently, that asked that.
How did they take that question?
I was like, come on. I have the X gene. Come on. This is gonna bring it out, right? Like Deadpool? This is gonna bring it out.
Well, how did they react to that?
So let's
what did he or she say?
She said no.
Just serious.
It was a very serious and stern no.
Susan, yes, Russell Targ. Russell, she just put that in the chat. Yes, that's the name.
All right, so let's see. Guesses are a Snoopy, a little alien, a hammer, a Hostess Twinkie. I actually have one of those on my shelf.
So here's my guess. I'm saying it's this.
Oh, look at that.
I'm saying it's this thing I got somewhere in Vegas, I think it was.
Yeah. There's not many of them around. Oh, my soul. Nice.
Oh, it's a Divic box.
Oh, that's in the box. That's in the back, actually, over here. I'm actually working on a video on that. So hopefully that'll be done this weekend. All right. So you ready? Here we go. Did you make a guess? Come on.
Me?
Yeah, you.
I showed you. I showed you in the video.
Oh, you think it's a coin?
I think it's your coin. That's right.
All right. Let's see. Locks off. Here we go. Oh, there it goes. It's a Green Lantern ring.
Ooh.
Nobody got it.
I was close. The front is the same shape. It's flat like a disc. So.
Oh my God. You sound like all the other guys that try that shit.
Well, it's closer than a mini box of cornflakes with red and green rooster.
There you go. So yes, it was my official Green Lantern ring that I put in there. So nobody got it. I actually went through all the comments. I think it ended up being like 120 some comments or guesses on it, and nobody got it. So,
wow.
Oh boy. Sorry guys. That was fun. All right, we got about 20 minutes left. I'm gonna wind this. Oh, you know what? Tell me a little bit more about your. I want to talk about the recovery from religion thing. Once in a while, we do talk about religion. It does creep into our discussions here, and I heard this when you talked about it on a different podcast. I was listening to a podcast that you did, and it was actually, I think, all about this. It was actually your Guerrilla Skepticism work, and then it went into this recovery from religion thing. So tell me, what does this do? What do you do? Is this for people looking for a way out of religion entirely, to be an atheist, or just out of religion in general?
No. So before I say, Susan put in the chat, Rob, did I mention that we have 2 new GSoW people just from this show? So thank you, Kenny, John, and John.
Yes.
Yes. So no, recovering from religion does not try to convert people, but we're a resource there. We're not quite a crisis line, but we're there for people to call about problems. And our I guess you say our talking points or our motto is we provide hope, healing, and support for people who are struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. So it's quite often people who come out of a very doctrinaire religion, and they've decided they don't believe anymore, or maybe they just think they don't believe, and then they're suffering the ramifications of that, like, being totally cast out from their family and organization. They're shunned, things like that. It could be not quite so severe as that. Jehovah's Witnesses do the shunning. Mormons don't officially do it, but you basically do lose your organization structure if you decide you're not a Mormon anymore. But people of all sorts of religions have trouble struggling with not only that, but maybe in your head you could rationalize, I don't believe in hell anymore, but I still wake up having nightmares that now I'm going to hell because I said I don't believe in hell anymore. So it's trying to deal with people's psychological problems from all of that, and basically giving them a support structure and resources to think their way out of the problem, or also to talk to other people who've been through this. That's always helpful in any struggle that somebody has in life. And that's a big help for people who are trying to leave a religion or struggling with these doubts of what's the meaning of my life? Am I going to hell? Is God punishing me this? I had someone call the other day, and here's the intersection with skepticism. She was sure she was possessed several times, and her church did exorcisms all the time. She had a bad headache, and they do an exorcism. She twisted her ankle, and they do exorcisms because there's no physical stuff that doesn't have it to do with demons.
Wow.
But this is a big problem. It was gnawing at her. So there's that intersection of the whole thing. But it's kind of it's a cool thing to be able to do. If anyone's interested in helping out and volunteering, you can get in touch with recoveringfromreligion.org on their website. They're always looking for volunteers, either to do helpline directly, take phone calls or chats, or just to help gather resources to give to people struggling with this. We have an online community where people do chats and talk amongst themselves. We do Zoom weekly meetings on the subject. I find it very rewarding to be able to help people in struggling with those kinds of issues.
That's cool. It sounds good, because when I was listening to you describe it before and now, it's not like, hey, you know what? If you want to escape your religion, just call.
No, absolutely not.
It's more of a support that if you just need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, we are not supposed to either self-disclose. That's just a normal psychological thing, because we want them talking about their problems. I don't want to interject what I believe about something directly, but also definitely don't deconvert. I mean, we, in fact, if people call saying, hey, I'm not happy with my particular form of Christianity because it believes this and this, I don't believe that anymore, is there another one that's better? We have resources to just help them go find another church. I haven't had to do that too often, because frankly, with a name like Recovering from Religion, you're not going to get that many people calling for that reason. But occasionally it does happen. One of the saddest things I've had is people calling from an extremely controlling cult that doesn't even allow internet access. So like I can't even do what I normally do, is point somebody to, give me an email address, I'll send you links. No, don't have an email address. Can't get to the internet. It's like that in the 21st century. That is heartbreaking. Wow. Yeah. And that happens in New York City. There are hundreds of thousands of people in the Hasidic Orthodox sect, which that applies to, for one example.
So what do you do in that situation?
That was just hard. There's organizations that try to help them. So I gave them that name just so they could somehow maybe do a phone call and find them. But it's hard. And sometimes they just wanted somebody to talk to, to say, oh, I'm not going crazy. This is I shouldn't just go back in and feel like everything is fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's several documentaries if anyone's interested in that subject. One is Unorthodox, which is a docudrama about a woman who left the Hasidic cult in New York City. One of Us is another one, which is an actual documentary about 3 people who left it. It follows their lives. And one was really interesting. He's a 20-ish guy, maybe 22, 23. And they show him sitting in a library for the first time. He's left the group and wasn't allowed computer access. And he sits down at a computer and he's telling the story. Well, somebody secretly gave me a URL and I knew you could type that into the address bar, http:/:. Wow. And then someone said, why are you doing that? Don't you know there's Google? And he never heard of Google. So then he said, oh my God, I could just put anything in here and the computer tells me what to look at. And then he found Wikipedia. And I swear to you, he said something in the vein of, Wikipedia is God's gift to humanity. Now I know how everything works.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. All right. So winding down here, we got a couple minutes left before I get into whatever announcements and stuff I have. But what advice would you give people if they're out there? Let's say if they're not sure about psychics, since you've done not only written articles and been part of Psychic Stings, what advice would you give them if they're not sure, if they're on the fence?
Yeah, I would read the well-researched and written Wikipedia articles on the subject. You can either go to mediumship or psychic abilities or psychic or pet psychic. Believe it or not, there is one. I wrote that article. Or, call up one on any of the well-known people that you've heard of. And I'll just throw out a name. Let's see. Thomas John Flanagan comes to mind. Look that guy up. Yeah. So he's a well-known person. He's got 2 TV shows, The Seatbelt Psychic and the Thomas John Experience. He's before the pandemic was the house show at Caesar's Palace. So, he's well-known and respected in the industry, if you will. And he's a felon. It says in the first paragraph that he, ripped people off using Craigslist.
Yes.
And he has not changed his ways because Susan Gerbic and Mark Edward did a sting on him and they had fake Facebook information and he called on them in the reading. And in the New York Times, they reported that he just, read back what was the fake Facebook information about their dead relatives who don't exist, their dead dog that doesn't exist. And, just read it from the stage like it was coming from their dead relatives. Right. So, yep. And, that's the kind of thing you got to do. You got to research these people and do something other than look at their own webpage. Yeah. Because their own webpage is going to be filled with their people who've been sucked in and believe it, and you can't change their minds. Right. But if you look at information that's in a public source where people have researched them and written what the true story is, at least you'll get that side of the story to give to the person who also believes it. Maybe it'll change their mind.
And that's something I always preach. I mean, if you're into something that's belief based like this, whether it's psychics or ghosts or UFOs, Bigfoot, vaccine denial, if you're into something like that, look at the other side. Look what the other side has. I mean, for us, we look at the other side to understand the way they're thinking, why they're thinking it, and that gives us a better understanding of how to approach it. But from their side, from a believer side, it's good to look at the opposite too, to say, all right, why don't they believe? And I think that you'll find that a lot of the shit that we say makes sense. That's not saying we're always right, because we're not. But a lot of these topics are well researched, and you'll find information like how psychics get their information. You'll see the tips and tricks. I've had Mark Edward on the show, and that was wonderful. Telling us how psychics do it. That was so much fun. I mean, at least for me, I was having a ball. But you get to learn what the other side is doing, and definitely, I mean, read the Wikipedia articles about psychics, mediums. Look up this Kenny Biddle guy.
Yeah, Kenny Biddle guy.
He writes some stuff.
You got to get to them before they fall for it, because then it is in fact very hard. And I've used this saying. It's attributed to Mark Twain. It's one of these things. I'm not sure he really said it, but it certainly is true. It is easier to fool someone than to convince them that they have been fooled. Yes. Right. That's very important. So that's one of the reasons I was bringing it back to what we discussed in the beginning. If you get somebody who's wondering about these things to read about it in Wikipedia first, oh, this is bullshit, I'm not going to fall for it, as opposed to first they go and fall for it and then try to point to Wikipedia. No, he's real. He told me about my dead relative's name. It has to be real. I'm not going to read the Wikipedia article. That's the problem. That is what happens.
All right. So with that said, I'm going to put you in the background for a little bit. I'm going to do my announcements real quick. Or you can stay for the announcements. I don't care. That's fine. I'm going to keep you here because I don't want to put you in the back. Nobody puts baby in the corner.
What happens when you go in the background?
You're in your own little zone there. Nobody can hear you. It's like cold and dark and scary.
Don't do that, Kenny.
Oh, all right. So with that was an awesome interview. I love talking to you, Rob. We always have so much fun.
Ditto.
But for everyone else that's watching, thank you so much for hanging out, spending your Friday night with us. I hope you guys learned something. I hope it was interesting. Tomorrow night, if you're not busy, at 8 p.m., I'll be on Three Tortured Souls again with Tim Vickers and Dave Schumacher. And our topic tomorrow is Reiki, which is always interesting to talk about. We're going to dive into it, like, what is it? Does it work? No. And then go into why we think that. And as always, it's 3 different approaches to it. And you'll get 3 perspectives, which is awesome. I mean, we all pretty much agree on most things, but we come at it from 3 different directions. So that's always interesting. For this show, next Friday, I'm going to have Beth Darlington on, and she is from Access Paranormal. She is Australian, but lives in the UK. She's a good friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about what makes a paranormal expert, because she wrote a blog about it, and I found it interesting, and I want to chat with her. So she's going to come on. I think it's going to be like 3 a.m. or something over there when she's on, so she might be a little tipsy. And then the week after, I'm going to have 2 guests on, Paige and Megan from the podcast Spooky Science Sisters, which is fun. It's a good podcast if you haven't. It's very bubbly, but they take on paranormal topics, and they both have scientific backgrounds. So they talk about what they found and discuss it. And I actually found them because they featured some of my work on their early shows. And I was like, oh, somebody clued me into it. And I started listening. I was like, hey, guys, thanks for having me on. And then we started talking. So they're going to come on the show. And then eventually, I haven't set a date yet, but I'm going to have Elle and Bailey Harris, who Elle was on the show a long time ago, but she wrote this book, and her older sister, Bailey. I talked to their father, Doug, a day or 2 ago, and we're going to work out a date and have them both on, and we're going to talk about their experiences with humanism and growing up in a secular household and all that. So,
well, if you want a co-interview her, please have me. I interviewed Bailey for an article, and she's fascinating. I met her at CSICon.
She's great. Her talk at CSICon when she took the big stage
blew me away.
Wow, that was the best.
Oh, guys, you have to tune in for this. It's amazing.
So, and that's about it. I have other things that are in the works, but don't know if they're going to happen yet. So we'll see. With that, I think we're going to cut out. Let me cue up my other video here, my outro video. And I want to show you guys real quick, you guys that are still with us. So the next time, if I go off, because last week I think somebody mentioned like Steve Huff which is a guy in the paranormal community that I freaking hate. One of the few people that I can say I hate him, because I think he's exploits any celebrity. Anytime a celebrity dies, he does the ghost box EVP sessions and claims that he talks to them. So I made a special frame for when I get pissed off, which looks like this. So it gets all red. I'm like, oh, now you know I'm pissed off. But I just wanted to show that real quick. Anyway, so I'm going to play my outro video. Rob, stay on the line for a moment until it's over, and then I will come back to you. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So for everyone else, again, thank you. And remember, never stop learning. And I'll see you next week.